Within 24 hours, I died, got buried, and came back to life. But the real horror began when I returned home from the cemetery. My wife and her lover were in my living room, drinking champagne and discussing my life insurance. My name is David. I'm 42 years old, and I want to tell you the strangest, most horrifying, yet most satisfying story of my life. This story began on that terrible night when I had a heart attack. October 28, 2023, 2:30 a.m. The crushing pain in my chest woke me from sleep. I couldn't breathe. I was drenched in sweat. I tried to wake my wife, Sarah, but she was in deep sleep. As I reached for the phone to call 911, I collapsed. When I woke up, I was in a hospital bed, surrounded by beeping machines. But something was wrong. I could hear everything. I could see everything. But I couldn't move a single muscle. I couldn't speak. I couldn't even blink. The doctors were talking about me as if I wasn't there. The patient shows no brain activity. One doctor said to another, "We've run multiple tests. He's been in this state for 18 hours now. I'm afraid we have to consider brain death." Brain death? But I was conscious. I was screaming inside my head, trying to move, trying to show them I was alive. But my body wouldn't respond. It was like being trapped in my own corpse. Then I heard footsteps approaching my bed. It was Sarah, my wife of 15 years. Finally, someone who would fight for me, who would demand more tests, who would refuse to give up on me. But what I heard next shattered my world. "Doctor, how long do we have to wait?" Sarah asked, but her tone wasn't desperate or sad. It was impatient. "We need to observe for another 6 hours as per protocol. Then we can officially declare brain death," the doctor replied. And then Sarah's voice had an edge to it that I'd never heard before. "Then we can discuss organ donation and other arrangements." Good. I mean, it's what David would have wanted. He always talked about helping others. That was a lie. I had never talked about organ donation. But what disturbed me more was a cold, calculating tone in her voice. This wasn't grief. This was anticipation. After the doctor left, Sarah pulled out her phone. I strained every fiber of my being to move, to give her a sign, but nothing happened. "Hey, it's me," she whispered into the phone. "Yes, they are going to declare him brain dead in a few hours. I know. I can barely contain myself either. No one suspects anything. I've been playing the grieving wife perfectly. My heart would have stopped if it wasn't already barely beating. Who was she talking to? And what did she mean by playing the grieving wife? The life insurance policy is for $800,000, she continued. Plus the house, the business, everything. We'll finally be free, Marcus. We can be together without hiding." Marcus? Who the hell was Marcus? And then it hit me like a freight train. My wife was having an affair. And not just any affair. She was planning her future with another man while I lay dying in this hospital bed. But the worst was yet to come. "I can't wait to get rid of all his stuff," Sarah laughed quietly. "Especially that ugly watch his father gave him. And those stupid baseball cards he thinks are so valuable." She was talking about my most precious possessions. The watch was the last thing my dying father had given me. The baseball cards were from my childhood, some of the few happy memories I had. Tomorrow we can start planning our trip to Hawaii. I've already looked at flights. We should book the suite at that resort you mentioned. Hawaii? We had talked about going to Hawaii for our anniversary next year. She was planning to take another man to our dream destination. Hours passed. I listened as Sarah made call after call, each one more devastating than the last. She called my business partner to discuss selling David's share. She called the funeral home to make arrangements. She even called my brother to break the terrible news, crying crocodile tears while she spoke. But the most chilling call was to someone she called insurance guy. "Hi, it's Sarah Mitchell. I'm calling about my husband David's life insurance policy. Yes, the one we increased last month. No, it wasn't his idea. I convinced him we needed more coverage for our future. Well, that future has changed dramatically. Last month? We had increased my life insurance last month, but Sarah had said it was for our financial security. Now I understood the real reason. Finally, the 6-hour observation period ended. The doctor returned with 2 colleagues. Mrs. Mitchell, I'm sorry to inform you that we had to declare your husband brain dead. There's no brain activity, no response to stimuli. I'm very sorry for your loss. Sarah buried her face in her hands and began sobbing. But I noticed something the doctors didn't. She was checking her watch while she cried. What happens now? She asked through fake tears. We need to discuss organ donation, and then we can begin the process of disconnecting life support. I need some time to process this. Can I have a few minutes alone with him? The doctors left, and Sarah immediately stopped crying. She pulled out her phone again. It's done, she whispered. They declared him brain dead. Yes, I know it's horrible, but think about our future. Meet me at the house tomorrow after the funeral arrangements are made. Bring champagne. That night, they disconnected my life support. But here's the thing about being in a catatonic state. Sometimes your body can continue functioning even when medical equipment can't detect it. As they wheeled me to the morgue, I was still conscious, still aware, still trapped in my unresponsive body. The next 18 hours were the longest of my life. I lay in that cold, dark morgue, fully conscious but unable to move or speak. I could hear the mortician talking to his assistant about preparing my body for burial. Rush job, he said. The wife wants a quick burial. No viewing, closed casket. She says it's too traumatic. Of course she did. A viewing would risk someone noticing signs of life. But then, something miraculous happened. As they were preparing to embalm me, my body began to respond. First, just a tiny twitch in my finger. Then my eyes fluttered. The mortician's assistant noticed immediately. Sir, look at this. The mortician rushed over. Dear God, he's alive. Call 911 immediately. Within minutes, I was back in the emergency room. This time, I could move slightly, and I managed to whisper to the nurse. My wife, she thinks I'm dead. Don't tell her. Not yet. The medical team was baffled by my recovery, but they agreed to keep it quiet while they ran more tests. Apparently, I had experienced something called Lazarus syndrome, a rare phenomenon where people declared dead suddenly come back to life. While I was in the hospital recovering, I learned that Sarah had already held my funeral. She had invited everyone we knew, playing the part of the devastated widow perfectly. Several people later told me how brave and strong she had been during the ceremony, but I wasn't ready to reveal myself yet. I needed to know the extent of her betrayal. So I discharged myself against medical advice and went home, to my own house where I was supposedly dead and gone. I arrived at 8 p.m. on what would have been the day after my burial. The house was dark except for the living room, where I could see flickering candlelight through the window. I used my spare key and quietly entered through the back door. What I saw in my living room made my blood boil. Sarah was there, wearing a red dress, my least favorite color on her, but apparently someone else's favorite. Sitting next to her on MY couch was a man I'd never seen before. He was tall, muscular, probably in his mid-30s. They were drinking champagne, Dom Perignon, the expensive bottle I had been saving for our 16th anniversary. But it wasn't just the champagne or the intimate setting that enraged me. It was what they were discussing. I can't believe how easy it was, Sarah was saying, her head on the stranger's shoulder. David was always so trusting, so naive. He never suspected a thing. How long were you planning this? The man, who I now knew was Marcus, asked. About 6 months. Ever since I met you at that conference. I knew I wanted to be with you, but David was always so healthy, so careful. I never thought he'd have a heart attack so young. Lucky break for us. Marcus laughed, and they clinked glasses. Lucky break? My near-death experience was a lucky break for them. The insurance company already approved the claim, Sarah continued. $800,000, plus everything else. We can sell this house, buy that place in Colorado you wanted, and start fresh. What about his family? His friends. What about them? I played the grieving widow perfectly. Everyone feels sorry for me. David's brother even offered to help me with the funeral expenses. Isn't that sweet? They both laughed at that. They were laughing at my family's kindness, at everyone's sympathy for Sarah's loss. I have to admit, Marcus said, I was worried when you first suggested this plan, but you pulled it off flawlessly. Plan? What plan? Sarah sat up and looked at Marcus with a smile that made my skin crawl. I have a confession to make, she said. David's heart attack wasn't entirely natural. My blood turned to ice. What was she saying? What do you mean? Marcus asked, though he didn't seem surprised. Remember those heart medication samples you brought me from the hospital where you work? The ones you said could cause arrhythmia if taken by someone who doesn't need them. Marcus worked at a hospital, and he had given Sarah medication. Sarah, please tell me you didn't. Just a small dose in his coffee every morning for 2 weeks. Not enough to kill him immediately, but enough to weaken his heart, make him more susceptible to a heart attack. I couldn't breathe. My own wife had been slowly poisoning me. The beauty of it, Sarah continued, is that it's undetectable after a few days. And who would suspect a grieving widow? You're brilliant, Marcus said, pulling her closer. And beautiful. David was an idiot for not appreciating what he had. David was boring, Sarah replied coldly. Predictable. He went to the same job every day, came home at the same time, watched the same TV shows. He never wanted to take risks, never wanted to travel, never wanted to live. That wasn't true. I had wanted to travel, but Sarah always said we couldn't afford it. I had wanted to try new things, but she always found excuses. Well, now you're free to live however you want, Marcus said. We're free, Sarah corrected him. I couldn't have done this without you. Having someone at the hospital to confirm the natural causes of David's condition was crucial. So Marcus worked at the hospital where I was treated. He had inside access, inside knowledge. This wasn't just adultery. This was premeditated murder. I had heard enough. I quietly backed out of the house and sat in my car, trying to process everything I had learned. My wife hadn't just cheated on me. She had tried to murder me. She had poisoned me, planned my death, collected my life insurance, and was now celebrating with her lover in my own home. But she had made one critical mistake. I was still alive. I drove to the police station and told them everything. At first, they didn't believe me. After all, I was supposed to be dead and buried. But when I showed them my hospital discharge papers and told them about the conversation I had overheard, they became very interested. We'll need proof, Detective Rodriguez told me. Do you think you can get them to admit to the poisoning on record? That's when I came up with a plan that would give me the most satisfying revenge of my life. The next evening, I returned to my house. But this time, I was wearing a wire, and police were stationed outside. I used my key to enter, and this time I didn't try to be quiet. I walked straight into the living room where Sarah and Marcus were having dinner, at my dining table, with my dishes, drinking my wine. The looks on their faces when they saw me were priceless. Sarah dropped her fork, and Marcus choked on his wine. "Hello, darling," I said calmly. "I hope you don't mind me dropping by. After all, this is still my house." Sarah's face went white. "David? But you were declared dead. We had your funeral." "Yes, I know. I heard you had quite a celebration afterward." Marcus started to stand up, but I held up my hand. "Please, don't get up on my account. I just wanted to thank you both." "Thank us." Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. "Yes, thank you, Sarah, for showing me your true colors. For 15 years, I thought I was married to someone who loved me. Now I know I was married to someone who was willing to kill me for money. David, I don't know what you think you heard, but I heard everything. I interrupted. The heart medication that Marcus brought you from the hospital, the small doses in my coffee every morning, the insurance policy you convinced me to increase. The plan you've been working on for 6 months. Sarah looked at Marcus desperately, but he was staring at me like he'd seen a ghost, which, in a way, he had. And Marcus, I continued, thank you for confirming that my wife is a murderer. I assume you used your position at the hospital to falsify some of my medical records, maybe made sure the toxicology tests were inconclusive. Marcus finally found his voice. You can't prove anything. Actually, I can. You see, I've been recording this entire conversation. That's when both of them lunged at me, but it was too late. The police burst through the front door. Police. Nobody move. The next few minutes were chaotic. Sarah was screaming that it was all a misunderstanding, that I was crazy, that the stress of dying and coming back to life had affected my mind. Marcus tried to run but was tackled in my backyard. During their arrest, Sarah made one last desperate attempt to manipulate me. David, please. I love you. I was confused. I was scared. We can work this out. But it was too late for lies. I had heard her true feelings about me, about our marriage, about my life. There was no coming back from that. The investigation that followed revealed even more disturbing details. Marcus had indeed used his position at the hospital to manipulate my medical records. They had been planning this for 8 months, not 6. Sarah had taken out additional life insurance policies on me without my knowledge, using forged signatures. Most shocking of all, they discovered that I wasn't their first victim. Marcus had been involved in 2 other suspicious deaths at the hospital, both involving heart medication, and both involving significant insurance payouts to surviving spouses who were later revealed to be having affairs with Marcus. During the trial, I learned that Sarah had never loved me. She had married me because I had a stable job and good earning potential. She had stayed with me because I was useful. I paid the bills, maintained the house, and provided her with a comfortable lifestyle while she pursued her affairs. The heart medication scheme had been Marcus's idea. He had used it successfully twice before and was confident it would work again. They had chosen me as their next target because of my life insurance policy and because Sarah had convinced Marcus that I was forgettable, someone whose death wouldn't be investigated too closely. But they had miscalculated. My unexpected recovery, combined with my decision to investigate rather than confront them immediately, had given us all the evidence we needed. Sarah was sentenced to 25 years to life for attempted murder and insurance fraud. Marcus received a similar sentence, plus additional time for his role in the other deaths. Both were ordered to pay restitution, though most of the money they had already spent was unrecoverable. The most satisfying moment came during Sarah's sentencing. As the judge read her sentence, she finally dropped her act completely. "This isn't fair," she screamed. "He was supposed to be dead." The plan was perfect. Even in her final moments of freedom, she wasn't sorry for trying to kill me. She was sorry she had gotten caught. As for me, I spent months in therapy, dealing with the trauma of not just nearly dying, but learning that the person I trusted most in the world had tried to murder me. The experience changed me profoundly. I learned that the heart medication had actually caused permanent damage to my cardiovascular system. I would need ongoing treatment for the rest of my life. But ironically, my near-death experience had given me a new appreciation for life. I sold the house. I couldn't bear to live there anymore, and moved to a small town in Montana. I used some of the money from the sale to start a foundation that helps victims of domestic abuse and attempted murder. I wanted something good to come from my horrible experience. I also started dating again, though very carefully. Trust doesn't come easily when your spouse of 15 years tries to poison you. But I've met someone wonderful, a woman named Linda who is also a survivor of domestic abuse. We understand each other in a way that people who haven't experienced betrayal can't. The strangest part of this whole experience is that I'm actually grateful it happened. Not grateful that Sarah tried to kill me, obviously, but grateful that I learned the truth about who she really was. I could have lived the rest of my life with someone who saw me as nothing more than a source of income, someone who was planning my death while I trusted her completely. Now I know what real love looks like, and what it doesn't look like. I know the warning signs of manipulation and abuse. I know that trust must be earned and constantly maintained, not blindly given. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I had actually died that night. Sarah and Marcus would have gotten away with murder. They would have taken my money, sold my house, and moved on to their next victim. My family and friends would have mourned me, never knowing that my death wasn't natural. But fate, luck, or divine intervention, whatever you want to call it, gave me a second chance. Not just a chance at life, but a chance at justice. The last time I saw Sarah was at her sentencing hearing. As they led her away in handcuffs, she looked back at me one final time. There was no remorse in her eyes, no apology, no acknowledgement of what she had done to me. There was only rage that her plan had failed. That look confirmed what I already knew. I had been married to a stranger. The woman I thought I loved had never existed. She had been an act, a performance designed to make me feel safe while she planned my destruction. But her failure to kill me had freed me in more ways than one. I was free from a loveless marriage, free from someone who saw me as expendable, and free to build a real life with someone who actually cares about me. Today, as I write this story, it's been 2 years since my death and resurrection. I'm healthier than I've been in years, despite the heart damage. I'm happier than I ever was with Sarah. And most importantly, I'm alive. My name is David Mitchell, and I survived my own murder. This is my story, and this is my warning. Pay attention to the people closest to you. The person sleeping next to you every night might be planning your funeral. But sometimes, if you're very lucky, you might just survive to attend your own funeral, and make sure your would-be killer gets exactly what they deserve.